That is what we're talking about here on Birds 365 EAGLES Eagles. And here to help us do that from The Athletic, longtime Eagles beat reporter, Zach Berman. Zach, how's your spring going since summer doesn't start till Wednesday of this week?
It's going well. I wish I had more practices to go to, but counting down until training camp now.
Come on, you got 100 minutes, Zach. Happy belated Father's Day. So
Thank
I
you.
guess I'll start it there, Zach. What did you take out of that 100 minutes that you got to see the Eagles, or can you take anything out of that short window in the spring when there's no pads, there's no team drills in Philadelphia, there's no mandatory minicamp? Did you learn anything about this team?
Nothing conclusive that I'd say changed the way I thought. I think training camp is when we'll obviously learn much more. I really do think that the big questions on this team, in particular, the back end of the defense in the middle, whether it's safety, whether it's linebacker, we won't have a better sense of that until training camp or the preseason. I can come on here and say Christian Ellis looked good, but that would really be cherry picking a very small sample size here. So I tend to think that this time of year, it's a matter of seeing who's there, if they're healthy, who's recovering from injuries, the shape they might be in, the mood that they're in. But we'll know more come training camp and preseason.
Yeah, I'm sorry if I can't get too jazzed up by 7-on-7 drills. It just maybe it's me, but that's the way I look at it. Here's something we were discussing before we punch up, because Eddie Kratz pointed out on SI.com. This will be the 20th year in a row, if the Philadelphia Eagles don't win the division, that a different winner of the NFC East will come forward. And that the other three teams, the Cowboys, the Giants, and the Commanders, all get to play the underdog card this year. We know the Eagles played the underdog card back in 2017, except they couldn't carry it over and win a division in 2018. It's almost unfathomable that you could not have a repeat winner for 20 years. Is the underdog thing going to work for the Cowboys? Do the Cowboys, Giants, and Commanders look at the Eagles as this behemoth that they've got to knock from their pedestal? How much of an upside is there to being an underdog in the NFC East?
I don't think the underdog matters so much as, certainly the schedule helps you when you're not the first place team, right? But again, there are variables there that we don't know. The reason why I would say that there hasn't been that repeat champion is there really hasn't been that bona fide franchise quarterback in the division since McNabb. I suppose Eli Manning was up there, right? But the reality is when you look at Tom Brady winning every year, Patrick Mahomes winning every year, you have that Aaron Rodgers winning every year. You have that quarterback who is atop that division annually, and the NFC East hasn't had that. Now, as far as this year, I think the Cowboys are a really good team, and I think Eagles fans should pay proper respect to this Cowboys team because I think the talent's there. I think the quarterback play can be there, and they're a legitimate threat, not just in the NFC East, but in the NFC. So if there's not a repeat champ this year, I think it's Dallas. So it would really surprise me if it's the Giants or Washington.
Yeah, I agree with you, Zach. I think the Cowboys are one of the three teams you could look at in the NFC that are clearly a leg up on the rest, along with the Eagles and probably San Francisco. But San Francisco, so many question marks around the quarterback spot. But before we get to the conference as a whole, I want to pick your brain on the coaching staff. And obviously we know they have two new coordinators. But Nick Sirianni also created this new level. It wasn't here before. Marcus Brady on offense, senior offensive assistant. Matt Patricia on defense, senior defensive assistant. These roles didn't exist last year. Marcus was here as a consultant late. They had Vic as a consultant in the lead up to the Super Bowl. But these are clearly defined coaching roles. Is this more than it looks like on paper or less, or you don't have a feel for it yet?
No, I think there's value in having experience in the room, particularly when you have I mean, on the offensive side, a first-time offensive coordinator in the NFL. On the defensive side, someone who's entering what is his second year as a defensive coordinator in the NFL. Really, so I look at it that it just gives you experience in the room. I wouldn't make any more of it than when Marty Mornhinweg was an offensive consultant, or senior offensive assistant rather, back in 2020. If I have my year correct there, it pays to have another voice, and I think that's the way they're viewing it. The coaching staff has background with both Brady and Patricia, so that's the perspective I'm taking on it.
All right, a little crystal ball action for you, Zach. Week 1 up in Boston or wherever you want to call it, Rhode Island, wherever that is.
Foxborough.
Eagles, Patriots. The Eagles win the toss, and of course they defer.
Mm-hmm.
So Jake Elliott kicks it out of the back of the end zone. Patriots get it 1st and 10 from the 25-yard line. Who are the 2 Eagle linebackers on the field?
At this point, I would say Nakobe Dean and Nick Morrow. I'm fairly confident it's going to be Dean there. They have a lot invested in Dean. They want him to be the a top linebacker for the next 3 years at least. As far as the second guy, I still think Howie can make a move. They'll go into camp and see what they have, similar to what they did at safety last year. And if they feel a move is necessary, then they have assets they can trade to acquire another linebacker. Perhaps Christian Ellis beats out Morrow. I don't think it'll be Sean Bradley or Davion Taylor, but I think it's going to be Dean and Morrow for the most part. I can also see them playing more lighter packages at linebacker, heavier packages in the back end, bring a safety into the box, bring someone like Terrell Edmonds into the box a little more and play that style. So there's a handful of things they can do to be versatile, but to answer your question succinctly, as far as the top 2, I would go Dean and Morrow.
Yeah, I'm starting to think, Zach, about 3 safeties more than I have in the past. And as you mentioned, it could be Terrell Edmonds playing essentially that second linebacker role. And you have, if Sidney Brown is up to speed, they started him out very slowly over the spring, pretty much hung with the third team both times that we were allowed to look at practice. And I put that in quotations, but I could see that developing a little bit more. Do you think there's a tipping point? Because, boy, when you start looking at Hassan Reddick up front and Nolan Smith, who's not, he's going to be the 4th rotational edge rusher in theory, but that's meaningful on this team that likes to come at you in waves. He'll get snaps, very undersized. Other than Jordan Davis, a lot of undersized defensive tackles. Lack of size. Nakobe Dean is undersized. Nicholas Morrow is undersized. Is somebody going to wake up in the NFL? We're in a new age. It's pass, and say, hey, maybe we can run the football against these light defenses. Do you ever see that tipping point coming back, pendulum more than that, coming back the other way?
It's a valid point. I hear what you're saying. I've spoken to a number of defensive coordinators who would love if teams just run, right? Because it's much harder to score big points if that's the approach that you're taking. So no, I think that I'm thinking out loud here. I hear your point there, and I do think the Eagles are undersized. I think some of the guys, though, for instance, Nolan Smith, undersized based on weight, not in terms of body composition, right? You look at him out there, and he doesn't look undersized when he plays. And Hassan Reddick, he doesn't look undersized when he plays. So I think I would pay more attention to playing size. Where I think it matters more is in the middle of the defensive line. And you mentioned Jordan Davis outside of that. I mean, I think Jalen Carter has the prototypical size there. Fletcher Cox gives you what they need to there. It's mostly Milton Williams, who's kind of this hybrid type. And you make a good point about Nakobe Dean. I mean, this is partly why Dean was there in the 3rd round. In Dean's case, I think you need to trust the fact that the instincts matter. and that when he was at Georgia, he was the best linebacker in college football for the best defense, and he was the alpha on the best defense in college football. So I think he's someone who you can have someone who's rocked up 6'3", 250. If they're a second slower with instincts, it doesn't matter.
All right, should be interesting. Again, I'm back to the first week of the season as to who will be out there for the Eagles. Let's say the competition at the right guard position is close, that both Juergens and Steen do what's asked of them in the preseason. One of them doesn't just blow the other away and look more dominant at it. Who gets the final vote? We know it'll be a collaborative decision with the coach, the offensive coordinator, the offensive line coach, the hands-on general manager. Shoot, we may even go to the hands-on owner. Jeff Lurie likes to point to certain decisions he makes. Always gets right. Amazing. He's batting 1,000% at those decisions. Who gets final vote as to who the starting right guard of the Philadelphia Eagles this year?
Well, Jeff Stoutland. I think they would take Jeff Stoutland's opinion, and that would be the organization's opinion. Jeff Stoutland, they trust. He knows his linemen. He knows what works best. He knows what works best next to Lane Johnson. So yeah, this is going to come down to who Jeff Stoutland thinks is the best right guard.
Zach, it was interesting to me, our second sort of open session. Now there's no team drills, but I was paying attention to the offensive line during individual work because it was a Kelsey maintenance day. And Jody brings up the competition at right guard. In theory, Cam Juergens is the leader. Maybe Tyler Steen can get involved. If they both can't do it, maybe Jack Driscoll gets involved. But, Kelsey had his maintenance day. We know how this team does business now. He's going to have a bunch of maintenance days over the summer. If you need Cam Juergens to get up to speed at right guard, are you going to have him play center during those maintenance days? Well, day one, they had him playing center, and they had Tyler Steen with the first team at right guard.
Yeah,
again, it's the spring. Sorry, real quick, it's the spring. It doesn't matter. But is that surprising? Does it tell you anything? Does it say, hey, they're comfortable with Cam Juergens doing both, or is it lean you more towards they really want to look at Tyler Steen?
No, well, Cam Juergens has to do both, because if Kelsey went down this year, and he hasn't gone down in a while, but if he goes down this year, Cam Juergens is your center.
Yeah.
Cam Juergens is a better center than he is guard, and the Eagles view him as their long-term center there. So it behooves them to cross-train Juergens, even if Juergens is the starting right guard, as I expect. If something were to happen to Kelsey, it's Kelsey and then either Steen or Driscoll. I'll say Steen for the sake of argument here. But that's why I think you'll see Juergens taking time at both guard and center this summer. And I think that they'll still give Juergens the work that he needs at right guard, but they need to keep him fresh there, because if Kelsey went down, the only way to avoid catastrophe is making sure Juergens is ready at that position.
All right, John and I kick this back and forth all the time. Need your take on it. A lot of people projecting with the addition of DeAndre Swift and maybe an expanded role for Kenneth Gainwell. This year, Jalen Hurts is going to throw the ball to guys out of the backfield a lot more than he did last year. He didn't do much of it last year, as a matter of fact, like under 100 targets for running backs out of almost 500 passes he threw last year. You buying that? Does the addition of a guy like Swift mean that the Eagles will be using backs more to catch ball out of the backfield this season?
Yes and no. And I say that Nick Sirianni loves to include running backs in the passing game. I mean, if you go back to his first year as coach, he was very transparent about how that's going to be used in the offense. What's changed since then is the addition of A.J. Brown. The Eagles have A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and Dallas Goedert, and this is like having a big three in the NBA. They're going to get the target share is going to be disproportionately skewed to those three players. And whenever Jalen Hurts drops back, the question is going to be, how do you get Devontae Smith, A.J. Brown, or Dallas Goedert the ball? And that won't change this year. So where I think that someone like Swift could take catches away from whether it's Quez Watkins or Jack Stoll or whatever was thrown to Miles Sanders last year. Not much there, but I do think Swift's going to be involved in the passing game. The other thing is I think they're going to have to pass the ball more this year. If you look at their second half leads and their fourth quarter leads last season, they really didn't have that. I think they only had 4 games where they passed the ball more than I don't have the stat in front of me, more than 5 times in the fourth quarter. They were running the ball to protect leads, and it would surprise me if they have as many double-digit leads in the fourth quarter. So there's going to be more passes to go around, and a lot of those will go to the big 3, if you will, but some of those will go to Swift. They are definitely going to utilize Swift in the passing game.
Zach Berman at ZBerm. Make sure you follow Zach on Twitter. If you didn't get your dad a gift for Father's Day, you're a little bit late. Underdogs, if you want to relive the Eagles' still only Super Bowl championship, Zach did a tremendous job there. Subscribe to The Athletic. They have a special going on as well. You can read Zach and his buddy Bo Wolf there. I'll leave it here with you, Zach. We do the show every day, Jody and I, every weekday. I'm amazed. We don't talk about Jalen Hurts anymore, Zach. All we did last year at this time was talk about Jalen Hurts. Is he good enough? Have you ever seen anything like this leap in production in one calendar year, and a player go from, can he do this? Can he do that? To being such a given, a constant, any adjective you want to use. It's the work ethic, the talent. We've seen it all with Jalen Hurts. He doesn't seem affected by the contract. Any comp? Can you come up with any? I don't remember anything like it.
Well, it's a good question. I mean, there have been players who, Mahomes' first year as a starter, Lamar Jackson's first year as a starter, where they step in and become MVP caliber players year one. But I think the delta between where he was in 2021 and where he was in 2022, that jumps out to me. And it's a credit to Jalen. It's a credit to the organization for putting talent around him. But no, you're right. Is that the part of the great thing about having a quote unquote franchise quarterback is the security of not having to worry about that position. Right now, every pass is going to be scrutinized. Everything he does in practice and the game is scrutinized because that comes with the position. But in terms of your list of concerns, if we were talking on June 19th a year ago, you would say, well, Jalen needs to prove X, Y, and Z for them not to acquire a quarterback next offseason. And now the only question is, A, can Jalen stay healthy? And B, is there another gear? Is what you saw last year when he was number 2 in the MVP voting and he went toe for toe with Mahomes? Is that the ceiling? And I know Jalen doesn't like to use that term ceiling, or does that raise? And I do think there can be more from Jalen. I think, and I saw this right with Nick Foles in 2013 and with Carson Wentz in 2017. When a quarterback plays so spectacularly one year, you can't expect that to be the norm every season. I mean, Aaron Rodgers has had down years. Mahomes, I don't know if Mahomes has had down years. He's had some years better than others. But what you want is that floor to be so high that when Jalen Hurts is on the field, you can win that game because of him. And he showed that last year.
ZB, great stuff. We appreciate you jumping in with us. Continue to enjoy your downtime. Before you know it, you're going to have to be seeing McMullen every single day.
I can't wait.
I feel for you, Zach.
Always a pleasure catching up, Zach. Thanks for hopping out with us. Hope you had a great Father's Day yesterday. That's Zach Berman from The Athletic here with us on Birds 365. All right, Jody Mac coming back. We got a good guest coming up in hour number 2. We'll give you details on that when we return here on Birds 365.